Well, that big debate between Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Labour leader Keir Starmer was frankly a total car crash. This was a televised debate on ITV between the two in the run-up to our general election, lucky us, here in the UK, which is one way of describing this burning skip of a debate, which largely consisted of lots of shouting and achieved little else other than making anyone who watched it less intelligent than they began with, and probably with higher blood pressure to boot. Now, does this all really matter in the grand scheme of things? Well, on the one hand, absolutely not, because the Tories are going to get absolutely battered in a crushing landslide defeat in, about 4 weeks' time, with one detailed study yesterday suggesting Labour could win 487 seats to the Tories' 71. Oof. And I guess what you took away from this debate depends on your own personal tastes. If you like someone being really very shouty indeed, lying and doubling down on a record most people think is apocalyptically bad, Rishi Sunak, he's your guy. And if you want someone who just waffled a lot, failed to rebut a truly glaringly obvious lie, and refused to break from the said apocalyptically bad record in any meaningful way, then Starmer had your back. Overall, this is bleak for our democracy and for our country. We really do deserve quite a lot better than this. Let's just start with the Prime Minister lying through his teeth without a care in the world.
I think people who work hard and aspire to provide that education for their kids should have that freedom. That's what my parents did, and I'll support it. But you heard it. Keir Starmer is going to raise taxes. But that's just the start, because there's a long list of other things that he needs to find the money for. So it's not just going to start and stop there. There are £2,000 worth of tax rises coming for every working family in this country. And as I said, he's saying he's going to raise taxes.
I do need to
that's
answer
not the start, and that's not the end.
That was a clip Rishi Sunak actually posted on his Twitter feed. Well, that's not true. Some grisly Tory apparatchik did. But that matters because they consider that to be a key attack line. Their key attack line. It is now their key attack line of the general election. Dear, oh dear. You really are a lying little so-and-so, aren't you? Now, I really resent Rishi Sunak for lots of reasons. Where to begin, really? Have you seen the state of the country? But he's now forced me to come in hard as a Keir Starmer defender. You see, this really is just a lie, a total raging, unapologetic, shameless lie. And frankly, Starmer should have just shut it down immediately by saying, this is a lie, you are lying. He had me screaming at the television trying to do rebuttal for the Labour Party, but he failed over and over again, even though Sunak kept saying it, in fact, 12 times. Sunak claimed it was an independent study by Treasury officials. So an independent Treasury assessment behind a claim that Labour would raise taxes for every family by £2,000. The truth is these so-called costings are made by Conservative special advisors. The Treasury isn't allowed to be involved in an election campaign, obviously. And what's more, the Treasury wrote a letter 2 days ago to the opposition telling them that civil servants were not involved in the production or presentation of the Conservative Party's document on Labour's tax rises on the calculation of the total figure used. They said that any costings derived from other sources or produced by other organisations should not be presented as having been produced by the civil service, and that they'd reminded ministers and advisers that this should be the case. So Sunak knew it wasn't a Treasury document, and he knew he'd been told not to present it as such, but he still did it anyway. The guy is a total raging liar. That didn't stop various right-wing newspapers going in hard on this lie, obviously, given they themselves are just open machines for lying. Like the Daily Mail, for example, the open sewer of the British media, or the Daily Telegraph, which splashed on Starmer on the ropes over tax. Now, some journalists are going, well, this could still be a victory for Rishi Sunak. One said, on the surface, this looks difficult for Rishi Sunak. Can you say that again? He lied with his teeth. On the other hand, there's an argument that the more people talk about the £2,000 figure, even debating whether it's true or not, it isn't true. The worse for Labour, adding, remember, £350 million on the side of a bus. Can we just be serious now for a minute? This will only happen if journalists don't do their job. In a functioning democracy, journalists should call out lies for what they are. Lies. It's not a violation of impartiality to say that a lie, an objective lie, is a lie. Because as things stand, politicians think quite legitimately, as it turns out, they could just say lies and get away with it. So without any accountability, the public sphere just gets inundated with lies. All political discussion is allowed to be walked around lies, leaving voters unable to distinguish between what's actually true and what's actually false, which always benefits, of course, the right disproportionately. They excel at this, not least when they're whipping up bigotry against marginalised minorities. Now, on this lie, a journalist at The Sun itself, a newspaper which knows a thing or two about dishonesty, to say the least, writes, view from Camp Rishi on the numbers/letters row, everyone just hears £2,000 tax rise. Again, unbelievable cynicism. Journalists just need to be clear. The guy lied. He lied no less than 12 times in that so-called debate. He keeps lying afterwards. Make sure everyone knows that he did. It's also infuriating because we need Labour to come under proper scrutiny over tax, not least their refusal to increase taxes on the well-to-do so we can fix the public services trashed by the Tories. I would know that the former pollster for Theresa May, the in-house Conservative pollster, said the one time, major time, when there was a big jump in favour of Keir Starmer and Labour was when he pledged to clamp down on non-doms and increase what would be a very small tax rise overall on the super rich. But he said on terms of increasing those who are super rich. Now, in terms of the oil and gas windfall. Now, what that shows is a huge popularity for increasing taxes on the super rich. But Labour isn't prepared to do that properly. They're talking about tiny sums when actually we should be taxing the wealthy to fix our services and our country. But instead, they don't come under scrutiny from that. They come under scrutiny from the opposite direction. Again, I will keep saying this based on lies. Now, clearly, Keir Starmer has no leg to stand on because he's lied time and time again from his promises to become leader of the Labour Party in terms of the pledges he made to legitimising Israeli war crimes. And journalists keep doing this. This is the point, because we can see it with Keir Starmer. They keep portraying lying as clever politics. That's what they did with Keir Starmer's leadership campaign. Rather than go, well, he clearly just lied repeatedly, they go, clever politics. Look, this is where you lead. You just end up trashing democracy. Don't tolerate lies from any of these people. Now, here's another choice part of this debate. Rishi Sunak on NHS waiting lists.
But we are now making progress. The waiting lists are coming down. But what Keir Starmer didn't mention to you, which you did, Julie.
Waiting list 7.2 million, they're now 7.5 million. He says they're coming down, and this is the guy who says he's good at maths.
Yeah, they are now coming down. They are now coming down.
7.2 when you said you'd get them down. 7.2 million, they're now 7.5 million. I'd like you to explain how they're coming down.
Because they were coming down from where they were when they were higher.
7.2.
And they're now on their way down. They are down, right? Yes, because the NHS was impacted by industrial action. And if it wasn't for that, 500,000 appointments would have been saved.
So it's somebody else's fault.
No, but let me address the question.
Oh, my God. They are down from when they were higher. You can see why everyone laughed. Clearly, the NHS is on its knees, deprived of the funding it needs, with nurses, doctors, paramedics, you name it, having suffered devastating cuts to their real terms pay, thanks to Tory misrule. Now, Sunak also tried to blame the plight of the NHS on industrial action, as he put it. That is, the NHS staff he's battered. And I know their strikes for higher pay would actually mean doing something, if they were listened to, about the crisis of retention and recruitment in the NHS. But on that, Sunak actually got Starmer on a point, because while Starmer rightly went for Sunak on not settling the junior doctors, Sunak then asked if he'd settle it by accepting their pay demands, which Starmer refused to do, because Starmer has the critique of the Tories' disastrous rule without the solutions. You don't sort the pay issue, then you're going to struggle to recruit and retain. Australia is going to keep nicking our health staff. Better pay, better weather. It's as simple as that. Now, also bear in mind that Labour is planning a massive extension of the private sector in the NHS, otherwise known as NHS privatisation. No thanks. Unfortunately, we're not getting scrutiny on that. Now let's listen to Starmer on immigration.
Who's in charge? He's the most liberal Prime Minister we've ever had on immigration. We've never had numbers like this before.
Great stuff. Lovely. This is the same Starmer who, during the Labour leadership campaign, made a repeated passionate case for immigration and denounced Labour for abandoning the positive case for it. Now he's trying to outflank the Conservatives from the right. Well, let's be clear here. Politicians only hit the red button of let's blame migrants for our problems because they don't have solutions to our problems. The most important part, though, came from the presenter when the presenter pointed out the Institute for Fiscal Studies said there was a conspiracy of silence by both parties about impending cuts. Both failed to offer convincing answers, so the conspiracy continues. Indeed, Starmer said there would be no return to austerity, but how's that possible when he's got no answer about how he avoids the impending cuts? But now comes the part which just frankly made me nauseous.
Thank you. I'm worried about the UK's lack of leadership on the world stage. I want our PM to be strong enough to take a stand even when it's hard. So what should happen next to stop these awful scenes we're seeing in Gaza?
Thank you very much indeed for that question, Omer. And that question there, it has a wide range to it, but very specifically, it is about the Hamas terrorist atrocities of October the 7th and then what unfolded after. the scenes of which we see on our television news every evening.
So the presenter reframes a question about the awful scene in Gaza. She says this is about the Hamas terrorist atrocities of 7th of October and then what unfolded after. That is so gruesome and so blatant. The violence against Israeli civilians was named in very explicit and emotive terms. Israel's then mass slaughter of Gaza, the carpet bombing of a tiny strip of land no bigger than East London, so it's a different colour and texture when looked at from space. The mass forced displacement under the threat of violence of the vast majority of Gaza's population. The slaughter of tens of thousands of Palestinians, many of them, of course, children. The maiming of thousands. The mass starvation, all underpinned with genocidal rhetoric and promises. That is simply folded in under the phrase, what unfolded after? The violence isn't named. The perpetrator isn't named, and nor is the victim. What a disturbing and deeply unsubtle way of telling the world, as the Western media has told the world throughout, that Palestinian lives simply don't matter. And then Rishi Sunak's only praise of the evening for Starmer came by applauding him for standing behind the Conservatives on Israel's right to self-defence, which in practice has meant an unfolding genocide. Both united in supporting war crimes. How cute. How heartwarming for all of us. This is where devastating questions I have to say about our democracy needs to be asked. The International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor has issued requests for arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his Defence Minister Yoav Gallant because of a murderous onslaught of both political parties backed. And our democracy is incapable, seemingly, of interrogating that fact. It isn't even a major issue, let alone what it should be, a national scandal. Now, other than that, Rishi Sunak says at least he's got big plans under Labour. His big plan is forcing young adults to do national service, otherwise known as unpaid community service, which is normally imposed as a punishment, dictating to young adults how they spend their free time, all from the party of individual liberty, as they often describe themselves. Now, it's true, Starmer doesn't have any real plans. So you've got terrible plans and a lack of plans. Yuck. The truth is, this country's in a mess, a terrible mess, thanks to both a broken economic model and Conservative rule, and Labour's just refusing to do anything meaningful to address that. Now, guess, in that context, what the viewing figures were. 4.8 million, more than 2 million down on 2019. Bear in mind our population has grown by about 1 million in the last half decade. In the abstract, that's actually crazy, because this is an election in which the ruling party is going to be absolutely obliterated, and the opposition party is going to win a stunning landslide victory. You'd expect lots of enthusiasm and kind of hope and just people counting down the days. That's not happening. That's simply because the mood is the Tories are awful, get rid of them, rather than any excitement about what comes next. Well, we deserve better. Labour's going to get that crushing landslide, come what may, so you should vote according to your conscience. You should vote Green unless you've got a decent left-wing Labour MP or an independent candidate standing, because otherwise this awful race to the bottom will just continue and there'll be no incentive for Labour to fix the problems that this country's defined by. That's the lesson from that debate. Please like and subscribe. Do leave your comments. Would love to hear your thoughts. Do help us take on this terrible political establishment at patreon.com/OJ84. Listen to the podcast. I'll speak to you soon.